Hello, welcome to this exclusive director's commentary. I'm going to talk about all kinds of things regarding this project: lighting, cinematography, planning, etc. I'm going to start by explaining the characters are very difficult. It took me hours to think of the titular character's name. I spent infinitely many nights working on this project, and trying to think of a good name for my friend here. I tried listening to the sounds around me, but all I could hear was a loud mechanical buzz coming from my fluorescent lights. And it became hard to focus on my work when it got too loud. The pistons make a sliding noise as they lift up and slam down as hard as they can, shaking everything around me. While this is going on, the entire time the horses are screaming. It's awful to listen to, but it helps me in my work because I don't have to buy glue. I simply make my own. And as I was trying to think of what to do with this character, I was struggling so much. Night after night, I could name him Eric, but that's the name of my plump orange friend. I could name him Rufus, but that's the name of the dog, which is different than a fish. I was listening to my favorite band, Sonic Youth, and it finally hit me that I should name him Harry. It was perfect. But then I changed the name. The only good name for a fish is Fish, because that's what it was. So I named him Fish, because he's a fish. I continued to struggle with his title. As we all know, every good lord and saint has a name and title, like Saint Jerry the Goat Fucker, who was named that because that's what he used to do. Eventually, I decided that because he is a dancing fish, I should name him Fish, Dancing Fish. This became very troubling, however, because my producer, Jason Blum, was worried that general audiences wouldn't get it. Eventually, over many legal battles, we came to an agreement that his name was allowed to be Fish the Dancing Fish because general audiences can easily relate to any number of dancing aquatic creatures, including fish, which coincidentally, the film is about. Dance film is a genre that typically requires dancing. It's easy to train movie dogs like they did for Milo and Otis. It's not easy to train a fish. We started by giving him small commands like sit, bark, etc. Quickly found was that fish do not sit or bark. We had to think quickly because we were already late on our deadline and way over budget, so we hired an expert. It increased the cost, but luckily we were still under budget. With the fish trained, it was easy to determine what the next step of a dance film would be: dancing. We started by giving him small commands like sit, bark, etc. The problem we quickly found was that fish do not sit or bark. We had to think quickly because we were already late on our deadline and way over budget, so we hired an expert. It increased the cost, but luckily we were still under budget. With the fish trained, it was easy to determine what the next step of a dance film would be: music. I decided to craft a score, but my surroundings kept bleeding into my work. Between giant metal pistons, horse screams, and fluorescent lights, it's easy to see why the music sounds the way it does. With the score complete, I began to work on colors. The colors were difficult for me, because as you all know, from a young age, I've had chromophobia. Every time I open my eyes, I scream because there are just too many colors. It became increasingly difficult to work on the film, but after several panic-induced heart failures, I managed to get the color just how I wanted it. Because I was in the hospital so frequently, I became well acquainted with the staff. I started to notice that every time I was in the hospital, I was helped by Dr. Harry Dogman Boy, which worried me because I'm deathly allergic to fur. Fortunately, he appeared to be a Sphinx cat, the least hairy animal in the entire animal kingdom. I began to notice something strange about him, though. Not only was he a Sphinx, but he also had a strange resemblance to Dwayne Johnson from the film Central Intelligence. One of my many inspirations for the film is the mass amount of work by Mr. Johnson, so it was strange to see him before me. Next, I needed to figure out how the camera would function. I was torn between a constantly spinning camera or a stationary camera. I realized that I needed to do the stationary camera because when I showed my staff the test footage with the spinning camera, they all simultaneously slipped out of the realm of the living. I still see them everywhere I go.
Felicity Huffman going to prison